I'm Steve Temple from the Electric Cooperatives of Mississippi and Ridgeland, Mississippi. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from OutSolve, the Electric Cooperative's premier provider of affirmative action compliance solutions committed to keeping co-ops in compliance with federal government regulations.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. Tony Anderson, NRECA's Michigan Director and General Manager of Cherryland Electric Cooperative, was elected NRECA President at the Power Exchange Conference this March in Nashville. He's a familiar figure in the electric cooperative program with a career that has included working at 5 electric cooperatives in 5 states and a high-profile charitable campaign that involved running a marathon in every U.S. state. Anderson, who announced he'll retire as Cherryland CEO in June, sat down with us to talk about where he's been, what he'll focus on as NRECA president, and what his priorities will be going forward. Tony, welcome to the podcast. This is your second time on, so thanks for coming back.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you have pretty much spent your entire career working in electric cooperative. Why don't we start with that? Walk us through where it all started and sort of where you've been over the years.
Sure. It started in my hometown of Timber Lake, South Dakota, on a co-op called Cherryland Electric Cooperative. I grew up on their lines, and they had a billing clerk position open in 1983. I started that job in August of 83 and spent a couple of years doing the billing. And then I moved into the accounting position back in the day when you could take an accounting course from RUS through the mail. Did that one lesson at a time, shipping it off to USDA. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple of friends move to a co-op in Montana, and I got recruited there in 88 to be an office manager at Cherryland Electric Cooperative in Medicine Lake, Montana. Eastern Montana, we serve part of North Dakota as well. And spent 3.5 years there and decided I wanted to be a manager. I instead of talking about problems at the water fountain, I wanted to be the guy they were talking about and maybe solving some problems. So I started looking for managers' jobs. And I found a small co-op in Wyoming, Niobrara Electric Association in eastern Wyoming, again against the border of Nebraska. We had 18 meters in South Dakota and served the county of Nebraska, and then a big part of we served the least populated county in Wyoming, which at that time and probably still is the least populated state. 1.06 meters per mile. Wow. Wyoming. It was the best stop. Not the best stop, but it was the best stop for me at that time because I could build line during storms. I could work in a substation with supervision. I did the magazine. I did the member services stuff, and then I ran the board meetings and supervised 11 other employees. Wow. We had 12 employees, counting me, over 8,400 square miles, and got my hands on everything. I tell people that's where I got my co-op masters.
Yeah.
And I tell people you shouldn't be ashamed, or you shouldn't say, well, we just have 3,000 meters. Small co-ops do a great job all across the country. It has a place in my heart. But I got bored. Got a little bored. And been a Packer fan my whole life. And there was a co-op in Wisconsin, O'Connell Electric Cooperative, that had an opening 35 miles from Lambeau Field. They had 5 managers in 10 years. And the co-op in Wyoming had a couple managers over a 3-year period. So it became my career trajectory to step in and take over a place that has had some managers turmoil.
Right.
So I spent 5 years in Wisconsin, and then there was a manager fired in Michigan at a co-op. Wisconsin was 8,000 meters, 30 employees, and then there was 38,000 meters in Michigan, and 60 employees at the time, 62 employees at the time. And so I went over there, and I've been at Cherryland for the last 20 years. And one thing I joke about with people is I've made a career stepping over a low bar. Replacing managers have been fired. It's not a high bar.
That's interesting.
Like it's been totally interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, tell us a little bit about Cherryland, because you've been there for a while. I'm sure it's evolved since you got there. Talk a little bit about the territory and the membership and some of the challenges and the programs that you guys have worked on.
Sure. The territory is about 1,400 square miles. We have about 12 meters per mile. If you can think of the little finger of Michigan, we're below the bridge. We're what they call trolls in Michigan. We're under the bridge by 2 hours, but we're near the little finger. About 3,000 miles of line, so we're really packed in, as opposed to Wyoming where we were spread out. We're 12 meters per mile, and it's 95% residential. We have some commercial stuff, but we're primarily driven by residential. It's a resort retirement area. We have 4 or 5 environmental groups in our community, so it's been a 20-year challenge to push our issue of there isn't one silver bullet,
right,
and keep the rates down at the same time. So that's been our biggest challenge, is the environmental community wanting us to be cleaner and greener all the time, and we've done that, but we've done it our way. We have a great G&T called Wolverine Power Supply Cooperative,
right,
and our portfolio is now 62% carbon free.
Right,
and we did that with minimal rate increases over the years. So very, very proud of that. The environmental community is very quiet now. And other challenges would be when I started, our reliability was terrible. You know, that Wolverine had some issues with reliability. The co-op did. We didn't have good leadership, in my opinion, for 8-9 years. And when I got there, we were in propane, we were in internet, and we had spent $3 million on a cell phone company. So my first couple of years at Cherryland, I had to divest of all that stuff. We sold the propane company, sold the internet company. My first annual meeting in 2003 at Cherryland, I had to tell the membership we're writing off $3 million. Wow. So that was the beginning. But fast forward to 2009, we retired our first capital credits in a long, long while. And since 2009 to today, we've retired $32 million of capital credits.
Wow.
And in 2003, our rates were 20% higher than the IOU. And I had employees not wearing my logo in public because our reliability was so bad. And today, our logo is everywhere, and we're just putting in a rate increase this month, and we're still going to be 17% under the IOU. So in that time, we've flipped the rates, and our reliability, we've hit 4 nines in reliability the first 3 months of this year. We missed 4 nines for the entire year of last year by, I think we're 99.987 last year.
Wow.
We could have rounded up to 4 nines, but we refused to do that. So it's been an awesome 20 years, and I've had some fortunate to work with some great people, and we've hired some great people. And I feel like we've turned that co-op around, and that's the best story I have.
That's great.
Where Cherryland is at today.
Yeah.
Is pretty cool.
That's amazing. And that's sort of a perfect segue into my next question is, I think most people probably have heard by now that you have announced your retirement.
Yep, June 15th.
You're going to be retiring later this year. Talk a little bit about what's going through your mind right now as that date looms. And then there's a person on your team who we've all worked with here.
Absolutely.
We know how deserving she is. Talk a little bit about this sort of what's going through your mind as you're looking at retirement, and then let's talk about who's going to be your successor.
What's going through my mind is what's next, and I don't feel like I'm really retiring quite yet, because the way the NRECA bylaws are, I'm able to continue serving as the NRECA president for 2 years.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I'm retiring, so I can focus on NRECA and do that as best possible. And I never wanted to be the guy who's gone all the time. I was gone 72 days last year, and it's going to be over 100 this year.
Yeah.
It's just not fair to my whole co-op to do that. Other managers have done that. I have the staff to do that. I just choose not to, because I'm at that point in my life where I don't have to.
Right.
And then Michigan is willing to send me back to NRECA. So today it feels like I got 2 years in NRECA.
Right.
I retire at my annual meeting. Though my last day of work is going to be my annual meeting at Cherryland on June 15th. I'll do some consulting for them for 10 months to help out if needed. Rachel's not going to call me because she's not going to need me.
Right.
But 2 days after June 15th, I'm off to a CFC meeting in Seattle, and I get back from that, and I have 1 day at home before the June board meeting in NRECA.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm thinking about right now is
No doubt.
where I have to be next. I'm trying to get to July. There might be a boat day or two.
Right.
Have an adult beverage on a lake by myself and contemplate what's next.
Yeah.
But it feels good. It feels natural. It's absolutely the right thing to do for Cherryland. If I stayed at Cherryland another 2-3 years, we could have lost Rachel Johnson. And Rachel sets us up for another good 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm, in fact, she asked me a couple days ago, we were talking back home, what's my proudest moment? They get a little emotional thinking about it, but the answer to that question is June 15th, when I handed off to Rachel Johnson. She's eminently qualified. She's smarter than I am. She's a great communicator, and she can do things I can't. And the timing is right in her life and in my life. And I'm immensely proud that I can hand it off to somebody the quality of Rachel Johnson. And for the next 20 years, I can look back on Cherryland and the time I spent building it and fixing it with the help of everybody else again. That time's not wasted.
Yeah. She's great. She really is. Yeah.
That's going to be my proudest day.
That's great. Awesome. So this month at Power Exchange, I think by now everybody knows this as well. You ascended to the presidency of NRECA. To walk us through for folks out there who are listening who may not really understand what the role of the president of NRECA is, talk a little bit about that unique role and the role that they play not only in sort of setting goals and policies for the association, but sort of setting the tone for the membership.
Yeah, you get asked to speak a lot of places, so you get an opportunity to vocalize the NRECA message and the co-op message, that the only message I've ever had my entire working career. That's it mainly.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously safe, reliable, affordable. How many ways can you say that? And I'm excited about that. You know, I'm kind of at a loss for words because the nuts and bolts of being an NRECA president is helping the board be the best board they can be. And that's a little intimidating, and I lose a little bit of sleep over that. But we have 47 other board members that are bright, talented individuals. The states really do a good job sending talented board members to NRECA. So my first focus is, am I helping them, and am I doing enough for them to do their job? Because we have a lot going on in NRECA. They're divided in committees, and I got to make sure I get that division right and get the right people overseeing those committees. So that's the nuts and bolts of it. And the other thing is just what message do I need to deliver to whatever membership I'm talking to next?
Yeah.
And how can I help them?
Yeah.
You know, I that's what I told the NRECA board when they elected me is I just want to serve.
Yeah.
Where can I help? Where can I do some work? And where can I make a difference?
Yeah. I wonder if, and you may not know this, has there ever been an NRECA president who's spent time in as many states as you? You're probably uniquely qualified to make these connections that other presidents may have never had.
Yeah, that was one of my pitches too. 2,500 meter co-op, 8,000 meter co-op, 38,000 meter co-op. I feel like I could talk to a lot of the audience. I don't know what the history of NRECA presidents is, but in our program, not too many people move 4 times.
Yeah.
You know, my wife will tell you, you know, that's not unusual.
Yeah.
Or not usual.
Yeah.
So I can't say how unique it is, but
off the top of my head,
that's my story.
True. Yeah.
I don't regret any move. I love every place I've been, and I'm just fortunate enough to have a big enough heart to leave a piece of it everywhere.
Okay. That's great. Let's pause here for a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we'll talk about what Tony's goals will be as NRECA president.
NRECA's Along Those Lines podcast is supported by Outsolve, the electric cooperative's premier provider of affirmative action and pay equity compliance solutions. Outsolve stands ready to prepare all required plans and reports on your behalf and partner with you to mitigate risk and ensure compliance. Visit outsolve.com/NRECA for more information.
I'm Christy Aldridge from North Carolina's Electric Cooperatives in Raleigh, North Carolina. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. So it's fairly customary for the current NRECA president to sort of set some stated priorities and the focus of their term. Have you done that? And if so, give us a sense of what that's going to be.
I've not done that, and I won't do that.
Okay.
I don't feel like that's my role as president. NRECA has a lot of Jim Matheson and the whole team, you all in communications. NRECA has a talented team with a good direction from Jim. My job as NRECA president is how can I help that direction?
Right.
And that's what I told the NRECA board a couple of weeks ago in Nashville at the Power Exchange. I don't have an agenda. Won't have an agenda. My agenda is our agenda. What do the resolutions tell us? What do we need to get done to fulfill those resolutions? That's where I need to be as the president of NRECA.
Great.
NRECA staff doesn't have time to have 120 resolution and then Tony's agenda.
Right.
That's no.
That's
I need to help you all however best I can. I want to serve. I want to work, and so I'm just looking for how I can help.
Great. And that's sort of, is a segue to my next question. We talked a little bit how the president goes out and does these speeches to statewide and to co-ops. Talk about some of the resources and tools that you have beyond that as president to affect the message and to change minds and to talk people through things.
Well, I don't have all the answers is what I would tell people, but I have experience. I have experience in getting at the small co-op and doing multiple things and getting a board to believe in a young manager and not micromanage him. And I have experience getting an employee group that doesn't want to wear their logo in public to wear that logo in public and have some pride. And those are stories and experiences I can share that I think are unique and that I hope to share in the 2 years to come.
Great.
I think that's what I can bring to the table is not answers, but experiences, what's worked, what didn't, and passion for our program.
Yeah.
It's all I've ever done, and I've never looked to do it anything else. Looked for other co-ops to go to and more work to do, but I've never looked to step outside the co-op world.
That's great.
There's no better place to be.
That's great. And one of the things that folks in the program and who are listeners may associate you with is this multi-year project of yours to run a marathon in every state. And I see you're wearing the logo of the beneficiary of those runs. Talk a little bit about that and bring us up to speed. What were sort of the goals of that? And looking back on it, did you meet what you were trying to do with that?
Yeah, I believe I did. I took up running again because of the Green Bay Packers. They had a 4-mile run where you got to run inside Lambeau Field. So I ran coast to coast on the grass at Lambeau Field, untouched, untackled. And then that transferred into the half marathons. And then finally, I did my first marathon in 2003. And then I joined the Big Brothers Big Sisters board in Traverse City in 2005. So that started a project called Marathon for Kids. And so I went from 2009 to May of 2020. I did my last marathon. I did, it was the Flying Pig. It was supposed to be Ohio during COVID, but we did it virtually. I got a Flying Pig shirt. Cincinnati was a great town. They did a great job, but I ran my final marathon in Traverse City. So technically there's one state I haven't done a marathon in, but I have a medal from every state. So that was 17 years of running marathons, and I raised $900,000 for Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Wow.
And I accomplished the goal of every state, and I feel like I raised a decent amount of money to make a difference. We were serving less than 100 kids at Big Brothers Big Sisters in 2005 and on the verge of bankruptcy at that point, but hired some good people there too, hired a good executive director, and they're going to serve over 300 people probably this year.
Wow.
So that's a story I'm very proud of too. Took a lot of sweat, took a lot of pain.
Yeah. I
also got to see every town in the country.
Yeah.
At varying paces.
Yeah.
At varied levels of enjoyment.
That's amazing. It really is.
I'm proud of that too, and but it's over.
Yeah. So you have sort of a new journey that you've embarked on. You announced earlier this year that you have formed a group called the Cooperative Family Fund, and this is sort of a continuation of your service, right? This is something.
Absolutely.
This is more charity work. Talk us through what exactly that group does and where you are in the process.
Sure. The Cooperative Family Fund was born out of finishing the last marathon, taking a break, and deciding what's next. And then it hit me. We had a lineman pass away at the investor-owned utility in Traverse City, and it hit me that day a few years ago. What happens to those kids? I've been focused on all the kids in Grand Traverse County in our region, and I hadn't thought about the kids across Co-op Nation. And so slowly the idea kept coming into my head, what can I do for those kids? And it evolved on a few of those 3-mile runs at different meetings with a gentleman by the name of James Wells from Oklahoma. He's a director there, and Dick Johnson from South Dakota, and a few other people I tossed the idea out to. And then I took it to the CFC board strategic planning in 2021, and I pitched the idea to the CFC board, and they liked it. So the Cooperative Family Fund has three platforms or 3 activities, I guess, and we're working hard on the first 2 right now. And the first one is, if you're a full-time cooperative employee at any co-op, any of the 900 co-ops, and you pass away with kids under the age of 18, the goal of the family fund is to set aside $10,000 for each kid. And so the second thing we're doing is we're putting together a memory book with volunteers. This is an entirely volunteer 501c3 nonprofit that we got our tax-free license, whatever you want to call it, in December of 2020. So the second thing we do is the memory book. We want to capture all the stories and pictures from the funeral of the person who passed, so that 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 10-year-old has a book, something they can feel and touch of their parent. So we're lining up volunteers to help with that. We have a couple of our first books in process right now, and then as time goes, we also want to encourage the coworkers, the people who are left behind, to, can you get 1 or 2 people to go to a Christmas concert? Can you get 20 people to go to a ball game? What can you do to support that kid as that kid grows up in your community without a mom or a dad? Because we're covering accountants, engineers, managers, linemen, and we're covering loss for any reason. Heart attack, suicide. We have 20 kids who've lost a co-op parent since Thanksgiving. For car wreck, 2 heart attacks, suicide, ATV accident, 1 on-the-job accident. So we're covering the entire family. It's not just line workers. It's secretaries, engineers, accountants, the whole family. So that's the mission. We have we've raised almost $200,000 since January 6th. NRECA put in $50,000. CFC put in $50,000. Then there's been other donations of varying sizes. We have about 100 co-ops who have contributed so far. Our goal is $1,000 per co-op. What we don't know is how many kids are going to be affected in a given year. We're on pace for 60 this year. Nobody keeps track of any records of how many kids lose a parent in our world. But we're getting applications back from the 20 kids. I've got 13 of the kids that we've got applications back. We've funded 9 of them on Monday. I'm doing applications when I get home tomorrow on the other 4, and then the other 2 applications I expect back in a couple of weeks. We have money to fund the 20, just barely. And then we'll start working on fundraising for the next.
That's great.
Whenever they come. Hopefully they won't come, but that's the goal. And it was born out of what more can I do? My wife's asking me, what are you going to do in retirement? Then when I told her this project, she's like, here we go again.
Different kind of marathon.
Different kind of marathon. But this isn't my NRECA president thing. This is my giving back to the to the industry that has literally given me everything I have. I worked on this project as long as I'm physically and mentally able. 10 years, 15 years, I'm 61 next month, and this is what I want to do in retirement.
That's great.
I can do it from the boat. I can do it from the beach.
Yeah.
And I can help out and make a difference for kids.
That's awesome, Tony. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing all that with you. Best of luck with the presidency. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks so much.
All right, man.
Happy to be here.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, Outsolve. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Tony Kruger from Sioux Valley Energy in Coleman, South Dakota. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.